Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Norfolk Select Board. My name is Kevin Calcutt. I'm here with my fellow board members Jim Lehan and Anita Mecklenburg. Tonight we will be going into executive session to kick off the meeting, but we will be coming back into public session at the conclusion of that, hopefully within about a half an hour from where we are right now. So with that, I would take a motion to enter into executive session.
I move that we enter into executive session. Do you want me to read the MGL and all of that? Yes, pursuant to MGL, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, 1 and 3, to discuss litigation strategy related to the grievance hearing with the Norfolk Highway Department, Employees Association, International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers, Local 301-N, and an executive session pursuant to MGL, Chapter 30A, subsection 21A, 3 and 7, regarding strategy in the matter of Rossi versus the Town of Norfolk et al., Norfolk Superior Court.
I will second.
Hearing a second, the chair does publicly announce that the purpose for this executive session under MGL Chapter 38, Section 21A, 1 and 3, to discuss the litigation strategy related to the grievance hearing with Norfolk Highway Department Employees Association, International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers, Local 301N, and MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21A37, regarding strategy in the matter of Rossi versus Town of Norfolk et al., Norfolk Superior Court. I also state that a public meeting would have a detrimental effect on the litigating or negotiating position of the public body. I also declare that the public session will reconvene at the conclusion of the executive session. Since we had both motions made in the beginning and a second for both, I do believe I can poll the board at this time. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
In that case, all in favor say aye. Kevin Calcutt, aye.
Jim Lehan, aye.
Anita Mecklenburg, aye.
And we are now in executive session. We'll be back. All right, welcome back to open session. We're going to move forward with the rest of our agenda, but first, if you'd be so kind, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Justin, would you mind taking us through our agenda this evening?
Yes, sure. We have a consideration of Chapter 61 land, essentially town's right of first refusal on property that is exchanging hands. Possibly discuss and consider a vote to approve the community choice aggregation plan prepared by Colonial. The board would consider a vote to adopt fiscal year 24 sewer rates, a vote to execute a lease and PPA agreement with Select Energy in relation to a solar PPA agreement on the police station, an associated car canopy there as well. A vote to approve road events, as well as the use of Town Hill for several events. Finally, to review and execute the warrant for the November 14th special town meeting. And in terms of discussion items, we're going to have a presentation from MMPC regarding the master plan, discuss the upcoming calendar for the select board, as well as discuss a goal-setting workshop that the board are participated in, as well as general updates.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Our first item is going to be our public comment period tonight. This is the period where anybody who's in attendance has the ability to share with the board as they so choose. We just ask that you please keep your comments to items that are within the scope of the select board or the town administrator, and they stay within about a 3-minute range. I understand that there are a few people here who are very interested in the sewer rate topic tonight. Please note that we will be opening up for comments during that agenda item, so if you have something you'd like to share that maybe you'd like to hear the context of discussion first, you're more than welcome to be able to speak after that time. But for right now, I will leave it open for anybody that would like to share for public comment period. I am seeing none, so we will be moving to our next agenda item tonight, which is to consider the Chapter 61 right of first refusal. Justin.
In the board's packet, there's a request to convey about 6.14 acres of a 96.6 acre parcel of land that's been entered 14 Baltimore Street. Is essentially to resolve a boundary dispute within a butter. This would convert residential use of the portion to that's currently classified as forest land. There's copies of the deeds and sort of the requests within the board's packet. I have town council here to speak in terms of that process. Before I toss it to town council, I do generally want to speak about the process for Chapter 61 conveyance for the town. So I've worked with the assessor to compile a list of all Chapter 61 land, which is essentially conservation land. And I'm proposing to the board, if you give me the thumbs up, that we adopt some sort of formal process in terms of how to address these moving forward. The town doesn't have a process to consider these proposals. Essentially, when they come in, they'll come before the board, but I'm proposing that we'll work on a draft process where this will come to the board. We'll make sure we send this over to relevant boards and commissions where they can consider and chime in and say, hey, there might be of interest of this property and why, and particularly work on a ranking system of the properties that we have. So if they do come up for sale, the board and relevant boards and commissions have already weighed in and said, hey, this might be something that we're interested in pursuing, et cetera. So if the board thinks that's something worthwhile doing, I would work on that for the future. But for the time being, I'll let Tom walk you through this process and this request.
Sure. Thank you, Justin. Good evening, members of the board. Tom Harrington, Town Council, Miaris and Harrington. So you have before you a letter from Laura Newcomb of Marsh, Moriarty, Ontel, and Golder. And so this, and by way of background, we started this process, or Marsh Moriarty started this process in the summer. And at the town's request, we asked them to withdraw the notice and resubmit it in the fall because we did not feel like we were in a position to analyze whether or not this was something we were interested in. And they did that, and I appreciate that. So you've got a new notice, and it's dated October 2nd. So kind of the rules of the road here are, if we're interested in this parcel, we have 120 days to close on it. We can always negotiate, if the other side's willing to negotiate, a longer time frame, for instance, trying to get it past our annual town meeting. But they would need to participate in that. This is a unique situation. So the typical situation in a 61 notice is there's a buyer and a seller. The buyer puts the property up for sale. The seller and the buyer sign a purchase and sale agreement, and that purchase and sale agreement needs to be devoid of contingencies. So you can't have a due diligence period or a mortgage contingency clause or a permitting clause that says I can, build a 16-lot subdivision. It needs to be kind of very clean, and the state considers that a bona fide offer. So and that's how we set the price. So we know that's the price we're going to match, and we move forward whether we want to buy it or not. What's unique in this one is this is not the result of a kind of an arm's length transaction between a buyer and a seller. This is the result of what I believe is kind of a long and ongoing land dispute between two abutting landowners, and this conveyance that's identified in this notice is the solution or the settlement for them. So I think we're being asked to be a little flexible on our rules, and that's entirely up to you. But I think the flexibility they're looking for is to have the town make a determination of whether or not we're interested in the land. And if we're not, they ask that we waive the nonconformities with their notice and just tell them that we don't want the land. I think the decision before the board is, are you interested in the land? Are you interested in thinking about it? A little more time. Have you made your decision? I think that's the consideration for the board. And I'll tell you, if you say to me, we're going to follow the rules are the rules, and we're going to reject this offer, that's a legitimate response. A second legitimate response is, let's poll the various boards and see if we're interested in it. And if we're not, if we're truly not interested in it, I don't know that we want to necessarily, or that it's a problem to waive it, but again, that's your decision, not mine. And if you are interested in it, truly interested in it, then I think we want to go back to them and say, you need to put a price on this, because we need to know what the price is. You need to firm up your notice so that we know what we're bidding on. Right now, it just says nominal consideration. So this is, again, in the terms of a settlement, not in the terms of an arm's length transaction. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Sure does.
Mr. Chair, one thing that I would add is, as Mr. Harrington mentioned, this had come to town's attention this summer. So I did have sort of informal discussions with some of our staff here. There wasn't any formal interest made known by any boards or commission. There was general interest by conservation, and I often say conservation is always interested in some land, but there wasn't anything that we received formally declaring interest in this property, just for your information.
Thank you. In the past, we've fielded a few of these types of 61A right of first refusals before, and in most cases, we would seek the insight of CPC, of Recreation, of the Planning Board, of Affordable Housing Trust, just to ensure that there wasn't any value that could be perceived from the town's perspective. I can't remember a property where anybody favorably reported back to us to say that they thought that the property held value from those perspectives.
We did purchase one 60A property back. It was the old Weber property, which backed up to Jane and Paul's farm, probably about 15 years ago.
All right.
But there was a reason for that, and other than that, I know of no instance.
So while I wouldn't want to venture to guess if any of these other boards or committees would be interested in the land, I would much rather like to have them vet that out first to report back to us before we'd be able to make a determination one way or the other, but I'll open it up to the board for their thoughts and opinions.
I would agree with that. I want to make sure that the different boards have that opportunity to speak their piece. I'm wondering, does if we waive our right of first
Refusal.
That's what I was going to say, and then I thought that doesn't quite make sense. If we waive our right of first refusal and they go through with this, does this resolve to both parties' satisfaction, the dispute that was ongoing?
It's my understanding that it does. Yeah. I'm not involved in, the town's not involved in the litigation, but my understanding is that this is kind of the basis for their settlement.
Okay, thank you.
I think I would poll the boards. I agree with the comments, and if no one has interest, I would personally feel we should tell them we're not interested, so that I'm not in favor of getting in people's way unless there's a real reason to be there, and let's release it and let them get on with their issues, and if there's no interest on the part of the boards, which I suspect there won't. I drove by this property. Conservation, I understand that they'd love every piece of property they can get, but it's not really. It's almost right next to the Millis line. It's not a really useful piece of property to anyone there.
In order for the other boards and committees to appropriately assess interest in the property, do we require a price to associate to the lot, or is that not necessarily going to be something that we believe is going to be a determining factor?
Well, I'm not going to get in the legal question, but I would think that if we ask them if they have any interest, they expressed interest, then the second part of the question, I think, comes into play.
Exactly.
But
Yeah. That's how I was
surprised if
thinking
anyone
of it,
has
because
interest. I'd be surprised if there was any interest in this. Certainly can't be used for ball fields. It's really tough to build. I mean, it's pretty heavily wooded, and
right. That's what I was thinking, is if we would reach out to the boards and see if they had any interest in the property. If they did, then I think we'd work with Tom and say, well, we probably need to come up with a price tag for this, because there's no purchase and sale agreement in here. And so we would proceed in that manner.
Very good.
the only thing that ran through my mind when I looked at that property was, would it be a source of well? And then, of course, I realized that we have one right around the corner, so that wouldn't work.
So do you need a motion from us?
No, I have directive. We can reach out to the relevant boards and commissions. I probably would ask just to see who we did previously. I was thinking Affordable Housing Trust, Conservation Commission, CPC, maybe
Recreation.
Recreation.
Yep.
All right, there we go. We're all set.
And then in the interest of time, if they could get back to us before our,
I think the next select board meeting.
yeah, that would be appreciated.
That's good direction. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you. And then in terms of the thumbs up, I think having a process in place sounds like a really good idea to have.
It seems like we did, but it was nothing formalized.
Doesn't look like it was documented.
It was another document, so I'll work on a documentation of it, and I'll have that for the next board meeting as well, so we'll have it in place for the
Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
All right, our next item this evening is to discuss and consider a vote to approve the Community Choice Aggregation Plan prepared by Colonial Power. Justin, what do we have for this one?
So this is a continuation of an agenda item that the board considered at its previous select board meeting. The board made the decision to hold off on approving the draft community choice aggregation plan because we're in the comment period. The public comment period is open until October 23rd until 5 p.m. I'm actually suggesting to the board that we hold off on this agenda item because we did receive a comment from the chair of the Energy Committee and some all valid opinions, and I want to forward it to our consultant and then as well to the board. And I believe the board is planning to meet on November 7th, and if that were to occur, then this will not delay this at all. So that'd be my recommendation, just to move on from this agenda.
And the public comment period will remain open throughout that time. Got it.
Correct.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
Very good. Jim, any questions?
Nope.
Sounds like a great plan.
Thank you.
You. Wow, this is the easiest action item agenda ever. We don't have to take any action on anything. Our next item this evening is to vote to adopt the FY24 sewer rates. Justin.
Once again, this is a continuation of the previous agenda item. The board had sort of discussed the fiscal year 24 sewer rates with our finance director, DPW director, and Mr. Abrams from the Abrams Group. So I'll invite Mr. Crane and Mr. Abrams to come up. I think so. Essentially, the board gave a directive to explore some alternative options that were presented, and we're going to run through those options and essentially allow the board to deliberate and ultimately hear from people and adopt fiscal year 24 sewer rates for this fiscal year.
Thank you. Welcome once again. Please take it away.
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Matt Abrahams from the Abrahams Group. Happy to be back with you this evening to discuss sewer rates. We have some slides for you this evening, some of which you've already seen, but also some updated ones for your review based on some action items that came out the last time we were before you. So, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, we were planning on just running through the slides, and then we'd be happy to discuss anything afterwards.
Please do. Thank you.
Okay, so we have the slides up on the screen now. This is a background slide just to give a little bit of financial background for the sewer fund. So the sewer fund is now an enterprise fund. and enterprise funds are meant to be self-sustaining. The last certification of retained earnings, which is essentially reserves for the enterprise fund, last certification was about $185,000. There is going to be a new certification in the near future, if it hasn't happened already, that was estimated to be about $160,000. The budget for FY23 for the sewer fund was about $177,000, of which about $155,000 was spent. The budget for FY24, which is the current fiscal year, the fiscal year that we are now in, is just over $203,000. General objectives, thinking about the sewer fund and some of the things that we've talked about, looking at these numbers. There's an objective to limit retained earnings usage. Retained earnings meaning that it shouldn't necessarily not be used to fund sewer expenses if it can be avoided. Develop and implement rates to fund expenses in full. In other words, that's your self-sustaining. Can rates be used to fully fund the sewer budget of just over $200,000 that we mentioned a moment ago? Next slide, please. This is a slide you saw last time we were before you, just to talk a little bit about the user base and also the different households or different accounts that make up that user base. So on the water side, there are over 2,700 users, and they average a quarterly bill of over 13,000 gallons of usage. Using a census number that we grabbed from the U.S. Census data, there's an average household of 3.13 people per household, which works out to be 47 gallons of usage of water per person per day. If we then look at the sewer user base and apply that same 47 gallons to the 66 users that are part of the sewer base, that works out to be, based on the average usage, which we saw is about 8,300 gallons. That's a much lower number than the water user base. We have a household number of just under 2 people per household. So the reason why we focused on that was to show the difference in the user base here. There's an average of over 3 people per household for the water base, whereas it's under 2 for the sewer base. Next slide, please. Yep. So starting to think about potential options for a sewer rate, something that could be voted and implemented. We talked about this last time. There is a meter charge in place on the water side that is a different, it's like a base charge, it's a fixed charge that is on every quarterly bill, and it's based on meter size. Now, we did look at that as a potential option for a sewer rate. We didn't think that it made sense at this time, mainly because of the 66 users, 65 have the same meter size and one has a different meter size. So we thought that would have negligible impact, and we didn't look at that any further. If the town were to implement a flat rate, which means just one rate for all users, no tiers, like we see on the water side, based on 1,000 gallons of usage, which is the metric that's used on the water side, we initially calculated a flat rate, as you see on the screen there, of $98.76. And that was the rate we presented to you last time. Since we last met with you, we did take a look at some of the billing data that we had available to us, just to see if we could rely on high usage that we were seeing from certain bills. This was something that came up last time that we were before you. And I spoke with the DPW staff on that just to make sure that we could rely on it, and we realized that some of the bills weren't necessarily reliable. So we backed down some of the usage that we saw in Tier 4 for some of those bills, and therefore, because of that, that meant that rates would have to be a little bit higher to make up for that. So even though you see the can you go back to the prior slide, please? The $98.76, I now have a number that's about $102, so it went up a little bit. However, we are not necessarily focused on a flat rate. There's been a general consensus to focus on a rate structure, a 4-tier rate structure like there is on the water side. So that's been our focus so far, and we are going to present potential tier structures for your review this evening. Next slide, please. So this is, you saw a slide just like this last time. This slide is meant to propose a four-tier rate structure, just like is in place on the water side today. And it was meant for 100% cost recovery, meaning if we are going to have the sewer fund have rates that fully recover costs, that's what we mean by 100% cost recovery. So if we look at the different tiers, under the rate/tiers header, you can see tiers 1 through 4 going downward. We have tier breaks at 4,000, 8,000, 12,000, which are a little bit lower than what is in place on the water side today, and that has to do with the user base that we already talked about. The tier breaks on the water side make sense for the water user base. They generally have higher usage, as we've already talked about, but on the sewer side, that structure would not make as much sense. So we focus on tier breaks that were a little bit lower, and you can see them before you on that slide. So to get 100% cost recovery, these were the rates per tier that we were focused on: $72.50 for tier 1, $102.50 for tier 2, $132.50 for tier 3, $162.50 for tier 4. You may recall from a prior slide, we had a flat rate of about $98, which was adjusted to about $102, so you can compare that to the different rates per tier. And you can see that tier 1's a little bit lower than that, but the other tiers need to be a little bit higher than that to make up for tier 1 being lower. The bills per tier analysis is on the right-hand side of this slide. Based on what we looked at, the billing data available to us, we have 10 users in tier 1, 28 in tier 2, 17 in tier 3, and 11 in tier 4. And the bottom part of the slide shows sample user bills. These aren't necessarily any users. We didn't point our finger at any particular users. We just chose general usage amounts of 4,000, 8,000, 12,000, 20,000, and then what we calculate is the average user, which is about 8,300 gallons per quarter. And you can see the different projected bills based on the rate structure that's at the top of the slide. We have both quarterly and annual amounts there for you. So that essentially was the presentation as we had it when we were last before you. And as I mentioned earlier, next slide, please. We did go ahead and take the action items that came out of last meeting, and we have something else for your consideration this evening based on those action items. So instead of focusing on 100% cost recovery, this slide focuses on 60% in year 1, which would be the current fiscal year of FY24. We decided to present a five-year ramp-up period, as we discussed last time, which would have 60% cost recovery in year 1, FY24, 70% in year 2, FY25, 10% per year all the way out to FY28 to get you the 100%. That was the approach that we took. So if we're aiming at recovery 60% of the costs as opposed to 100% of the costs, you would expect the rates per tier to be lower, and you see that before you now. So we have a tier 1 rate based on this proposal, $32.50, tier 2, $62.50, tier 3, $92.50, tier 4, $172.50, and you can see that tier 4 is much higher. That was something that we did discuss with DPW, and we decided to stick with that higher number in tier 4 to promote conservation in the lower tiers. And just like the slide before, you can see the sample user bills down at the bottom of the screen, and they are lower than the prior slide, as you would expect. Next slide, please. And our final slide as part of this deck, I mentioned the 5-year ramp up. This would be years 2 through 5 in that ramp up period, ultimately trying to get to that 100% cost recovery by FY28. But looking forward, we wouldn't anticipate necessarily that the sewer budget would remain stagnant, meaning we don't anticipate it's going to be $203,000 every year. So we were comfortable based on historical increases of going with a 10% increase in the sewer budget annually. So what we had as the FY25 sewer budget is 10% higher than 24, and 26 is 10% higher than 25. Just to make sure that we were accounting for the fact that most likely the sewer budget will. First table that you see here, there's the cost recovery getting up to 100% by the end of the 5-year period, and what we have as the rate change annually in order to make that happen. So with the 60% in year 1, getting to 70% in year 2, also factoring in that 10% increase in the sewer budget, we have a rate change of 28.3%. And then going to the next year is 25.7% over the prior year, so on and so forth. And using the same user samples that we had on the prior slides, you can see their updated projected bills in the table at the bottom of the screen. Those are quarterly bills. And Mr. Chairman, those were all the slides we had for you, at least initially, so happy to open up for questions and comments.
Thank you so much. I'll kick off with one question, Blair. Seeing that 11 households are currently using over 12,000 gallons in a given period, how does that compare to the average user townwide? Understanding that everybody has the own manner in which they process.
As you mean with regards to water? Or?
Yeah, with regards to water.
It's really difficult to make that determination because water is used vastly different with irrigation systems, with, washing cars, everything under the sun. I don't know the exact number percentage-wise, what's in Tier 4, but I can certainly get that for you. But the reason that we kind of kept this as its own entity was because of the different uses. It's really difficult to go from water to sewer in this particular instance because the different gallonage.
Gotcha. And there's no irrigation in the new condos, right?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Thank you. Anita?
No, I appreciate you doing the work to make those adjustments that we had talked about last time, so thank you for that. I just have sort of a general conservation question. So if I'm a user of a sewer and I wanted to reduce, does that just mean flushing less, running the dishwasher fewer times, bigger loads of laundry? Are those the kinds of, what are the literal action steps that you would do to reduce or be more conservative in terms of your use of the sewer?
I would say high efficient washer and dryer, standard appliances that where you're using water. Same with showers. There are a number of different ways to conserve water, and DEP is very proactive about us having to do so. Eventually, at some point, we may have to look at a different toilet system where we take in toilets or give rebates for people buying new toilets to promote water conservation. So it would fall along the same lines, and DEP is very proactive with that.
Thank you.
Jim?
Well, I feel a little bit like I'm kind of in a curse and a blessing on this because I have a lot of history on this issue. And I've done a lot of looking back and reading how we got here. And I want to stress, while I wasn't part of the selectmen's meeting when they voted this, I was at town meeting and I voted for it. And I support the concept of where we are. But what I didn't understand in my own vote was the financial impact of that vote. And so I went back and looked at all of the correspondence, watched all the meetings and what have you. And at no point during any of those discussions were there discussions of the financial impact of this decision. Now, I don't know what private conversations may have taken place with Blythe, the former town administrator, but it's irrelevant. If it's not in writing and it isn't on tape, we can't deal with it. I personally don't like any of these solutions, to be honest with you, because I think they're punitive. I think it is unfair to impose this $3,000 to flush your toilets. I think that's wrong. And so I'm continuing to look for another solution. I also agree that I don't think the town should be subsidizing this forever. So trying to find a way to get around that and get to a point where we might find an alternative is what I've been trying to look through. And I've had a chance to talk with Tom about some ideas and some different solutions. And there might be an opportunity to do that, where we might be able to not impose this kind of significant increase on the residents, which I do not favor, and yet not have a prolonged, how should I say, the town shouldn't continue to have to pick up the difference on a prolonged period of time. And can I turn it over to you to suggest how we might get there a little bit?
Certainly. Thank you, Jim. So again, Tom Harrington, Town Council. So kind of not in the early stages, but not quite fully baked ideas, but I do think we can approach this from a different perspective, and that is we need to find a efficient way to financially engage some of the property owners who are not part of the paying sewer district. And I think that there may be, I think by addressing our legislative authority, I think we can come up with a different system that, as I understand my marching orders, more mimics the contracts that were in place as opposed to the sewer. And I'm cautiously optimistic we can get there. We need to do a little bit more work, but I think we've got kind of the kernel of some ideas that we could push forward that would get you to where I think you want to go.
And again, I'm only speaking for me, but I would very much like to see us try to pursue that avenue, that if there is a way to keep this pretty much where it is today, but take a direction that has reasonable chance, if you will, of collecting or relieving the town of that burden at some very reasonable period of time in the future, I'd like to give that a chance. Because from what I understand, we would know within a very reasonable period, like this within the next calendar year.
I think so, yeah.
We would have an answer to that question. And if the question's no, we go back to the table and revisit. But if that is a possibility, then it buys us time. It takes the burden off of these folks short term. Yes, we're going to have to subsidize it for a little period of time, but it's hopefully under 12 months. And I think that's a worthy investment on our part, because these rates, it is a 40B up there. There are 25% of those residents that are in those homes, and to hit them with a $2,000 or $3,000 bill is, to me, unthinkable. I just think it's unthinkable. And I propose the rate tiering. To me, that was the only concept I could think of that would phase us into this, because we can't subsidize this forever. I understand that. So I'd like to at least give this idea, and I know you can't go into any more detail at this point, but I'd like to at least give this a chance.
Thank you. Mr. Bartoloni, are you online right now? Peter, are you there?
Connecting from out of the country, so maybe I have a problem.
Oh, he's out of the country? Okay, well, that might be a little harder to do. Perhaps there's somebody here from the Condo Association that might be able to give us some idea as to what the current average bills look like that you've been paying for the last couple of years, just so we can have some scope of where we're going, where we've been, and what's being proposed today. Can you just take the mic from me there, Ray? Thank you.
Thanks. Did you just need to press it?
Yep, you got it. Low green light, I'll tell you you're good.
Thank you. Mind if I sit?
Oh, yeah, go right ahead, yeah.
Yes, we are paying on a quarterly basis 40% of the cost of the operation of the plant based on the original contracts. So at for the past year, that amounted to a total of $62,000 for the condos, which are then turned into the Condo Association rates, fees. Those fees vary based on affordable units, based on the senior units, and then the regular units. So there's variable amounts. As a result, the portion that's attributable to the wastewater treatment costs are then variable to these people. The increases actually have been a little bit higher than expected. I guess part of the concern is also around the maintenance of the costs. We're still waiting to get some some good explanation on significant increase in the white water bills, which are over 50% of the cost of the operation. But we've been able to manage with this amount, even though we know it's higher than what other condos are experiencing with their own wastewater treatment plant. The builder originally had the concept of putting this wastewater treatment plant into a company that would not only bill us or any other condos, but also any commercial units that will be built on the property. So that's why we've got this unique situation, and we've got probably an overbuilt plant at the moment.
And could you just give me a range of the annual costs per unit for sewer service? I know you said that there's a couple of designations in there that cause that to vary, but give me an annual range of what's dedicated as part of those assessments that are dedicated to sewer.
On a monthly basis?
Monthly's fine, yeah.
Let's see. I believe I had that. Hold it. Actually, on a quarterly basis,
Even better.
it's $377 on average. So that would be lower for senior units and affordables lower than that, and a bit higher for the regular units.
And may I ask you, sir, what are your homeowner fees? What's your total homeowner fee?
$504 for the senior units, about 70% of that for affordable, and then the regular units are,
Just shy of $600.
and then slightly lower for affordable.
What was the number, sir?
I'm going to say it's just shy of $600.
Okay, thank you.
Good, Justin.
Yeah, ask her.
No, I was just wondering, 'cause I
Is
heard
that monthly?
Yeah,
I heard monthly too. That's a monthly.
That's the HOA fee monthly, but the 377 average is quarterly for sewer.
That's correct. That's part of the fee.
Thank you, sir.
That's inclusive in the 508 number.
So the way the,
I'm sorry, can you just say your name and do the whole shtick for us? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jen Barnett. I'm an attorney with Marcus Rico at Emmer & Brooks. I represent the association. I have since, for the nearly, I would say, 17 years. So I have the benefit as Mr. Lehan of the background to an extent. I apologize for the lateness in which I got you a letter outlining that. But the way this development was initially established, it was really set up as part of this larger parcel. It was the original developers granted that land that formed as a library. Mr. Borelli was the original owner. He still owns, I believe, or at least is involved in need of investment. Norfolk Town Center LLC was the original developer to Claremont. Norfolk Utility, another Borelli entity, was the wastewater treatment plant operator initially. By way just of very brief background, when in 2002 a special permit was issued for the wastewater treatment plant, at all times it's had a 30,000 gallon per day capacity. That hasn't changed. So all right. That hasn't changed in 21 years. The association, the land forming condominium rather, lots 26 and 27 have always been allocated 12,000. 12,000, 30 is 40%. That's how that 40% allocation has been. When the condominium was first established, the developer initially did not set aside the number of affordable units, and it was very important to the board then, as I'm sure it is now, that a number of those units be kept affordable. And so because of that, the board at that time insisted that not only 11 of the 44 units have these restrictions in terms of either affordability and or the 55 plus restriction that exists in perpetuity. They wanted to review the documents as well to make sure that the affordable units were not just being sold for of lesser amount of money, but in less than market rate, but that the average use and the average bill was also going to be affordable. That's why when we're talking about the quarterly bill for the water sewer charges, it's built into the annual budget. And so each unit is assessed on a monthly basis based on their pro rata share that's set out in the master deed. So a market rate unit might have 3% beneficial interest assigned, and so that's how their common charges are calculated. Whereas a unit with a deed restriction in either in the form of affordability or in age, it has a much lesser rate. The board was very cautious and took a lot of time to make sure that those existed. When the wastewater treatment plan was developed specifically with the condominium in mind, it was the infrastructure as referenced in the special permit. It says the actual special permit that was issued in 2002 said it was sized adequately and properly to accommodate the needs of the proposed Norfolk Commons development. And it also said that no off-site facilities or developments are to be connected. So at that time, and again, we're going back 2 decades, at that time it was initially set up just for this initial area. Granted, a lot of things have changed, and it's wonderful to see the development that's happened. And I know that the reason that the special sewer district was at such importance was to promote development. There has to be another way, though, that happens. It can't happen at the expense of the unit owners. I understand some of the units or some of the other properties in this area are not paying their pro rata share. The association is. The association, I believe, has submitted their most recent quarterly bill, and they should be up to date. I know that at the warrant, the last town warrant, there was reference to a number of delinquent accounts. I think that issue was an anomaly when it referenced the association being outstanding, and once they became aware, they immediately corrected it. I'm not aware of that being a recurring event. I know that the association has historically paid 40%. All the easements that were granted, all the initial comprehensive permit for the project, make specific reference to the wastewater treatment plant, the availability, and the association's 40% share. If we were going to deviate now and assess each individual unit owner and not the complex as a whole, we will be unwinding and undermining 20 years of decisions because there's nothing in any of the historical documents to indicate that was ever contemplated, that the individual members would bear the responsibility. It was always contemplated as an association expense, and I can't emphasize Mr. Lee pointed out, like it's one thing to think about sewer rates, and it's a quite dry topic, but I ask that you really think about the homeowners that are going to be impacted, that are going to have their common expenses doubled, tripled in some instances. And what are they going to do? They're going to decide between food that day and sewer. That's just not conscionable. So I'd again echo that the sentiments of Mr. Lee that there's got to be another way, and it has to remain in effect that not only the rates, but the manner in which the rates are assessed to the condominium as a whole and not against the individual members.
So $377 then, right? That was the question that we posed.
I'm not saying of course, these things change, but the
point I'm trying to make is that we're in the process of assessing and deliberating and coming up to a final agreement right now, and I appreciate all the background. I really do. Your letter was fantastic in helping to catch us up on some of the perceived actions that have been taken in the past, and I truly do appreciate that. But at this moment, we're trying to get through the data and come up with a perspective and perhaps a plan forward. I will open it up for general comments in a moment, but the core of what I was looking for there, thank you so much, Ray, was $377 a quarter is currently the average that a homeowner is paying for these services. And there is no assessment for higher usage, lower usage. The only designation that's being given out is the type of unit that the person is living in, right?
Correct.
Cool. Thank you so much. Question?
Yeah, I do have a question.
Sure.
So in terms of the 40%, just for my understanding of it, does the association use 40% of the sewer, or do they use more than 40% of the sewer?
Right now, the sewer is running at 10% capacity.
In terms of your question, they're not using more than their allocation per the agreement that they had before. That's what your question was,
I
right?
think so. I'm trying to understand, because I'm hearing you say that the 40% is really important. So I'm trying to understand how that came to be and the impact on you, if that makes sense.
Let me take first crack at this, Blair, and then you can answer. The 40% is based on the capacity of the wastewater treatment plant. So they had an allocation that essentially was 40% of the wastewater treatment plant, so thus their payment share is 40%
Of the budget.
of the plant. Again, did that answer your question?
So they're being billed on an the association is billed on an allocated basis rather than actual use. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's actually a benefit for the town in this sense, because the association is paying more than it's actually using in terms of the allocation. I understand that the infrastructure in and of itself has not changed at all in the time that the association there's been no new connections, should I say, to the association. There hasn't been an increase in use. So there's been no material change that would justify abandoning the practice of billing on an allocated basis versus an individual use. Under the act that was just recently passed, it does allow the town a mechanism by which to charge future users the costs of the increase, and it allows it imposes a betterment fee on future users, again, in recognition of the fact that there is a cost involved, but the association should not be the one to subsidize those costs. It should be by the new owners who were not originally connected and who are going to benefit from access to the sewer system.
Jim?
Well, your history is, by my memory, very accurate. I was on the other side of those conversations, so I don't disagree with anything you've said. Unfortunately, we had a bad partner on both sides of the deal, as we both know. And let's just say it was poorly managed and poorly designed, but we're left with the mess. I still go back to the point that I think I'm hopeful that there is a solution to this that is punitive in nature, because I personally feel, personal comment, that these types of rates are punitive. You have a very high homeowner association fee as it is. I moved to River's Edge, and your homeowner fee, now that septic, in most instances, these treatment plants are designed to deal only with the community in which they serve. In fact, that is the case in every other situation we have. This one was designed, as you correctly say, to manage a larger portion of land which is yet to be developed. And the proportion, which none of us agreed with on day one, but it's ended up the way it was, those allocations were designed to take that into account. There are no users. Now, has been some development, obviously, Walgreens, and, but 2 sinks and 2 toilets is not exactly an excessive amount of use. So you're not wrong in that statement, but there is some development. I have no idea if this land will or will not be developed. It hasn't for a long period of time, so hopefully it will, because it's an ideal spot for that. And that, in its own right, would bring some solution to this issue, but that's an if. So personally, I'd like to ask you, Blair, is it possible? Well, let me ask it another question. I'm going to ask you, if I may. You're in a flat rate system now. Is that would you, if given a choice, and let's just deal with the 40% for discussion. If you were given a choice between a flat rate or a tier rate system, which basically will regulate that 40% a little up or down based on usage, you have a preference to that, or is it because you're just sort of traditionally in a flat rate process and that's easier to manage?
Yes, I think the fact that that's how we've been structured, that's the way
Right,
people are used
understand.
to handling it, that making that kind of a change, I think, would just be, start creating an issue that people are just not used to and we're not used to handling.
So from a management perspective, if it's paid for within your HOA, then you would prefer a flat rate process as opposed to a tier rate process?
Basically, yeah, that's what we have now. I can mention one other thing, if I may, Mr. Chairman, that one other aspect that I think hasn't been looked at relative to the plant is the cost. And I think that needs some significant review. We've talked to other people who have plants, and we've talked to some people who run plants, and ours seems to be extremely high. Whether it's the company we're using to actually run it or whatever, but I would suggest, in light of wanting to not have to absorb excess costs, that perhaps one of the things that also ought to be looked at is the actual cost of the operation of the plant.
May I comment on that? Well, that's a town meeting decision. You know, our budgets are presented to the town votes it, and those are the budgets that we live with. They're looked at every year. I'm far from an expert on budgeting for sewers. I will leave that to people that have knowledge I have none whatsoever of. But at least at this point in time, that's not something that's on the table for us. We're trying to figure out how to work through a fee structure, if you will, that doesn't cause us all to have major concerns. We're trying to find a solution. And I think we're all in agreement that we're trying to find a solution. We may not all be on the same page how to get there, but we're trying to find a solution. I don't think there's a need to, I hope. Well, we all agreed on looking at tiers and phasing in and so on, so I think you know that there's a consensus that we're trying to work this through, because we recognize the concern. So,
I will say that what was highlighted in terms of the increases that the average user would see with our 100% recovery tier system was understated. I mean, you said double, triple. The 26% of users that find themselves in tier 3 are quadruple. The 11 users that find themselves in tier 4, which I still have some questions about if that's actually accurate, because that seems like a whole lot of usage for an average household of 1.9. But even still, those users are somewhere around 10 times of what they were paying before. And so I agree, that's not reasonable. But in structure, I do believe that we need to get to something like this at some point. I do feel that having this be in line with a usage as opposed to a flat rate is something that we need to get to. Now, if that involves us working together to figure out how we get there at some point, then I'm more than open to doing that. But I do feel like we need to get to this at some point. That being said, I agree with Jim in that forcing this onto the FY24 billing cycle seems rushed, seems premature, and does seem unfair. So to that end, I would be in support of maintaining the 40% allocation and then leveraging the retained earnings to be able to cover the other 60% to be able to get us through FY24. I'm in support of the plan. Justin, I think you and I also spoke about the efforts that we could look down to try to reach out to some of the commercial property owners and identify if there is some sort of offset we could get from them as well. So it seems like we're fairly aligned on that. But I don't want to just kick the can down the road either. I don't want to have this same kind of contentious discussion a year from now and find ourselves in the same position. So I would want to have some sort of structure in place where we have some check-ins, we have some progress reports, and we're able to identify what path we're going down before we get to October of 2024. That's what I would support from my position. Anita, I'll give it to you for your perspective.
So I don't have the history going back, so I'm catching up. So if I'm misunderstanding, so I'm just going to summarize how I see it in broad strokes. And I agree, first of all, last time we're looking at tiered because there's a total human side to this about paying your bills every month, and that's very real, and I have a tremendous amount of empathy for that. My understanding is we had a charge from town meeting. Town meeting created the sewer district because the sewer situation was costing the town. The town was subsidizing the sewer, and the town said, we don't want to subsidize the sewer, we want the sewer to be self-sufficient. So that's my sort of layperson, I think is maybe the better way to say it now, the layperson's understanding of that. So the town has given us as a board the charge that this needs to be self-supporting. Looking at the impact on your average user and on this association and on these faces that are looking at me right now, I see how a tiered thing could help us make it more manageable and give us room to figure out a way. Obviously, if we're going to a structure like this, then you're going to want to renegotiate your condo fees, right? Or your association fees, because then the association fees make some assumptions. So I'm totally interested in partnering and making this manageable. At the same time, I feel the weight of this charge that we got, because there's a ton of voters that aren't looking at us right now that are saying, wait, we're paying for their sewer, right? And so to figure out an elegant way that we can make sure that you don't have this impact on your daily bills, but also that the town is no longer subsidizing the sewer situation. And so what that looks like, I'm open to finding some kind of a solution. I thought the tiered was a nice first step, because at least it isn't all, here we go, here's this huge bill, and figure it out. So I liked the idea of the tiered. If there's other conversations that I'm not privy to that are clever ways around it, I'm open to exploring other clever opportunities. But I definitely feel the charge from the town and from the taxpayers who said, we no longer want to subsidize this. Like, that's definitely what we voted on at town meeting, and that's what we heard. But we also want this to be a reasonable option for you, and so how do we figure that out? And I don't think we have the answer in this room, or we have ideas around the answer, but we don't have what that answer is just yet. But I feel like I have two things that don't sit in the same room very nicely, right? And both of them I feel strongly about. Like, I feel strongly the charge that we had from the town, and I feel strongly that these are human beings who we're making a decision here that affects their day-to-day living. And so I'm very open to a clever way to interpret it, or a clever way to get around it. And but I think our charge today is to set a sewer rate. Yes, go ahead. I'm very interested in.
I think we agree we clearly agree with that the town should not be picking up the balance of the cost. However, the other parties to those agreements, the other 60% that was allotted or allocated to the other portions, should be collected. I think that's the issue. Those amounts haven't been collected from the other parties. We've paid our portion. They haven't paid theirs. It seems to me there's a legal avenue to pursue that would cause them to have to pay their share.
First, I fully support keeping the rate at 40% for right now. I think that is the right thing to do, and I also fully support that we cannot subsidize this to the end of the earth. So, and we're in the same place. But it isn't as simple as going out and suing somebody to get back, and I'm sure you can relate to this. We could end up spending more than we get back. So it's not as simple as doing that. And what we're looking at is an alternative way to try and find some way to recapture those funds that doesn't cost us more than we get back. I've been involved in too many suits here with the town over my 17 years on this board, where, the wisdom of going forward with a legal suit was ill-advised. It's cost us more than we got. So that has to be weighed. It's not that simple. I wish it were, but it's not. And I see you shaking your head. Yes, you know full well what I'm saying. But let me finish, if I may. I do hope that there are some ways that we can explore that I'm not privileged to share, and I don't think Tom is at this point either, but there may be some ways that we can go forward that they're not magical or anything like that, but help us get to that point without engaging in that kind of activity. And we're going to explore that. And so I'm looking to buy time to see if we can't find an answer, and that's why I started with those comments to begin with. That I completely agree with my counterparts. We've got to find a way to get there, and I'm asking you to give us some time to figure that out.
And if I may add, I believe that one of the things, and maybe Tom can give us some guidance here, but one of the things by creating the sewer district, and I could be misremembering, so I apologize if I am, but having the sewer district gave us a little more teeth to do some collection that we weren't able to do before, but now we are. And so I think we wanted some teeth to do exactly what you're saying and to follow up and to do those things. So that's my
correct.
recollection.
Well said.
So my understanding is that an act was put in place prospective in the interest of the fostering development in the area. And so that could be done through betterments and through assessments. That's certainly within the scope of the board's authority for any new connectors and anyone who proposes going forward to connect to the sewer. I didn't see anything in the act, though, that would apply retroactively, and where the association has been paying for the past nearly 20 years. I don't think that they should be penalized when they've, complied all along. And one of the reasons that this whole development is such a draw is because of that development and because of the people who are there and who make that their homes. This is a great community, and I think that there are, a number of development opportunities. I don't know how valuable it would be if for, development to have, access to a sewer. I would suspect that would be valuable, and if a developer knows that's in place, even, maybe we'll encourage Needham Investments to develop that property. So I think that there are solutions here. I just would ask that no action be taken to change or deviate from the existing structure, and that additional discussions be had, because I echo what you had to say. I've been doing this quite some time, and litigation should be avoided if at all possible. I think this is ultimately these people's homes, and nobody wants to be fighting when, they just want to be able to come and enjoy their, access to water, access to sewer, the basics, and not have to worry that by flushing their toilet, they're going to have to cut down on their grocery bill.
Well, I think we're saying the same thing. We're just saying it in a different way. And, if we set the rates this evening, whatever this board chooses to vote, then those are the rates, and then they are revisited on an annual basis. And that gives us some time. And hopefully we'll find some solutions that won't cause this discussion to reoccur.
May I ask a question?
Go.
So it seems like we have two charges after listening to the presentation. One charge is to set the rate for the sewer rate, at least for fiscal year '24, but also we're proposing, or there's a proposal on the table to restructure the billing. Is that correct? And so we have to consider that at this time as well.
So procedurally, Justin,
Yeah.
walk me through it.
I'll get to the next step. So
Yeah.
we had general, I think, sort of understanding from the board. The board at the previous meeting wanted to see a 60% recovery rate. We have a slide that represents a 40% recovery rate that's framed essentially as a tiered structure rate as well as a flat rate structure. So we have that information for you. Mr. Abrams can walk you through just those two slides, and then we can get some more questions there. Ultimately, I don't want to relitigate sort of some of the things from the past. When you set water or sewer rates, they're set on an annual basis. And just to clarify, they're set on an annual basis. So annually, the board would consider setting the sewer or water rates. Sewer, water, all of these things, they're operating as an enterprise fund. The budget is set annually. We have an annual budget process that's public, the select board, advisory, as well as town meeting. So that's the opportunity to look at the budget there, to discuss that on town meeting floor as well. So those are avenues to discuss, and I think I understand from the board that no matter what we do in terms of setting the sewer rate, we want to have a process moving forward collaboratively to find a way to address this moving forward as well. But I think we have slides to talk about what 40% recovery looks like in a flat and tiered structure manner. Okay?
Yes, so we do have two additional slides we can show you related to that. Here's the first one. So it's the same, similar slide to what was shown earlier, but instead of focusing on 100% recovery or 60% recovery, this one is focused on 40% recovery. I do want to point out, though, that this is based on water usage. So if the board were to choose this structure that's in front of you, my understanding is that users would be billed based on their usage, not based on allocation or other metrics that have been discussed this evening. So it's the same exact tier structure that was seen earlier, but it just has lower rates because there's less costs to recover. We're trying to recover 40% of the sewer budget rather than 100%, 60%, some of those other metrics that we were looking at earlier. So tier 1 rate would be $12.50 per 1,000 gallons, tier 2, $42.50, tier 3, $72.50, and like we saw earlier, a much higher rate for tier 4 to promote conservation. And you can see the updated sample user bills at the bottom of the screen, both quarterly and annually, based on the usage numbers that are in front of you. So this is a usage-only slide, meaning the users would be billed based on their usage, their water usage, under this structure. The next slide is not related to water usage. It's just straight math calculation, trying to recover 40% of the sewer costs. So essentially, we're just dividing the costs to be recovered across all 66 accounts equally. So it's not based on usage, it's just based on a number that needs to be recovered, equal shares amongst all accounts. So we have the quarterly bill per account as $308.51, which works out to be about $1,234 annually under that calculation. And those were the additional slides that we had related to the 40%.
And in this scenario, we're billing each of the 66 accounts individually. We're no longer billing the association as a whole. Is that correct?
In this model.
In this model, okay. But what we're hearing from you is that that's not preferable.
Well, that's correct, because on our condo documents, we basically have a differentiation on what people will pay. If, in fact, though, that the bills for our 44 owners were sent to the association, we could handle it that way. We could then pay that bill, or pay those bills, if you will, and then continue on handling it the way we do now, which is make it part of the condo fee. But otherwise, there'd be differentiation in the rates. You'd have to be adjusting for some units up and down, and I think it would create more work for you than you'd like. But we've always said in the previous meetings with the town, if the approach that was being used didn't exceed the 40% that's provided for in the easement agreement, then we were okay with that. But that was the assumption that the bills would be sent to us, even if they were based on individual units.
And you would still be accommodating for it in the same manner. You would just take all 66 bills, make it one lump sum, allocate it out based on the designations of units, and handle it in the same manner you basically had been handling it in the past.
Yeah, except it would only be 44 units.
Got it, okay.
Right.
Can you go back to the previous slide for me really quick? Thank you.
I'm sorry to speak out of turn. I just want to jump on something Ray said. So under the association doesn't have a lot of discretion if the individual unit owners are charged outside of the condo fee. Because they're under 183A Section 7, there is no right to offset. So if these charges are not part of their condo fee, the individual unit owners are going to, have affordable units, who have deed restrictions because of age, are going to be billed at the same rate as market rate. And so because of that, they are going to be the most penalized, and they are going to be the most impacted by achieving.
But we're not talking about that, right? We just talked about sending them all to the association for them to be able to allocate themselves, right?
But by doing that, basically by doing that, it's still all going to be one bill. And
Right.
so just from a managerial perspective, from the town's perspective and the association, it's a lot easier to manage and administer one bill and to collect one bill, on a delinquency for one, body than 44 individual unit owners.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I understand what you're saying, but there is a component of this that's important to us, which is we set up the right structure on how it's utilized. And so that whether it's tiered or flat, is a negotiable item, but we need to be able to regulate by usage. just like we do with the water. So that is something that's integral to setting up the structure that we set up. So while I understand that would be the ideal world, if you can deal with that all coming into one pot and allocating it out, this is something we need on our side, is we need to do it that way.
Can we calculate the usage collectively?
And what do you mean by that?
I'm
So
sorry.
add up all,
Yes, and so keep with your tiered system, because I think that's really interesting, and I think it's respectful, especially it allows that, the impact won't be felt by the residents, but so keep your tiered system that I think it encourages conservation and does the things that we want it to do, but then calculate this group collectively, because that's the system that they have, so calculate it collectively.
you would want to, if I'm understanding your question, you wouldn't want to combine their usage and then run it through the tiers, because then they would get to the higher tier faster. So if you do it based on each account and calculate their bill based on each account's usage, they would stay within this tier structure as you see it and stay in the lower tiers, and then you could accumulate the billed amounts before sending them a bill, if I'm understanding what you're talking about.
We can add up to 44 bills and make the payment. That's no
Thank you.
problem.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. I'm not going to go down the road of trying to pitch the fact that 64% of users would see a decline in their average bill if we did go with this. We're not going to go down that road today. So it sounds like we would prefer to go with the flat rate system for at least FY24, if I'm hearing correctly.
Till we get a chance to work this all out.
Yep.
But understanding it needs to be unpacked.
Yeah, no,
Like,
100%.
Yeah.
No, and I would like to add that I agree with the approach. I think that, we do buy ourselves some initial time here. I'm certainly not against Ray's suggestion to go through everything with a fine-tooth comb over the next few months and to try to reduce any costs we can while we're there. And it allows us to do that, take these first steps to kind of set the groundwork here, but a chance to refine it, whether it be in the spring before we get to the next fiscal year, or whether we're a year from now, whatever that is. But I think it gives us that opportunity to make some decisions with a little more time.
Any thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to, I was just thinking this, so I might as well share it. So just want to make sure everyone understands that this structure, whether this one or the one on the next slide, was designed to recover 40% of the sewer budget.
Correct.
So that means that if the town were to fully spend its sewer budget this fiscal year of $203,000, this is meant to recover 80,000-ish of that.
Right.
Correct.
So that means the remainder would have to come from some other source.
Retained earnings.
Retained earnings.
That's where we propose it would come from, because there's retained earnings there. And just for the board's information, our free cash was certified last week, and with $162,000 in retained earnings. So we have enough theoretically in retained earnings to fund the shortfall for this fiscal year. I think next fiscal year you'll have some other conversations. And that's also expecting that there's no unforeseen expenses that emerge as well.
Kevin Hayes.
You talk about retained earnings, is that of the wastewater treatment facility?
The wastewater, yes.
Because the only dollar amount we're aware of beyond the pure cost is the capital reserve that we've been contributing to for the last 20 years.
I think one thing we want to reframe is how we're looking at agreements, right? So I think what we're looking at is operating as an enterprise fund. And so as an enterprise fund, we're going to just, I think we're rejigger the language a little bit. So I'm going to say I'm the new party here. So in terms of the town, we have free cash certification. There's a water enterprise fund certification that gets certified by the state, and the wastewater enterprise fund, and that gets certified by the state. So the enterprise fund are retained earnings, which is the language we're using. Maybe it's the same language, but in just different terms. That's wastewater enterprise fund. That's how it's classified by the state.
Money is available for capital replacement and repairs.
Right. And that's why I made a point of saying that's assuming there's no unforeseen expenses, right? Because usually retained these enterprise funds, they like to have some retained earnings to provide for some relief. There's usually a budgetary line item that'll say unforeseen expenses as well, which we do account for in our budget. But when you have some larger capital projects, you have those retained earnings to give you some safety and leverage in case that occurs.
Same thing, different word.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
All right, it sounds like we have some general alignment as to the path forward. I do believe that we are prepared for a motion unless there's anybody else who has any comments from the audience tonight. I'm seeing none. In that case.
And may I just ask or suggest one more thing, is that we have a timeline that's aggressive on this so that we're not at the 11th hour again next year saying, should it be 50% or should it be 60, like, that we really begin the work now of figuring out what we're going to do for fiscal year 25 so that it's not,
Mr. Chair, I think that's a great point, and I think this is we're saying the board theoretically most likely will set a fiscal year 24 survey. I think there's a great reset and opportunity to collaborate. Instead of waiting until we get to the end game, let's have these discussions early. I believe Tom and his team will work together to sort of look at some opportunities, to look at some, ways to be creative. I think we need to have some future board agenda items, and then obviously collaborate with the group that is affected here. But we will not wait. We'll work proactively to move forward and try and address this.
Maybe not, maybe we don't have time to do it this winter, but I eventually would like to see water and sewer rates. I know we do that over the winter normally, January, February. I would like to see those align at some point.
Exactly.
We may not have a chance to do it this coming winter with all the pieces in play here, but I think going forward beyond that, I think it makes sense to try to put those two in the same frame.
Which is what typically is done, so I agree with that as well.
thank you.
Love the efficiency. I would just recommend that we do set something up in a scheduled format, maybe like a quarterly check-in, just to update where we are as to any advancements that we have, and make sure that it's posted in the agenda so anybody who's interested can check in to be able to see where we're at and be able to provide their feedback, just so we have some general alignment going into next year. Sound good?
Good, thank you.
Glorious. In that case, I will take a motion to approve the FY24 sewer rates at a 40% recovery flat rate of $308.51 to be billed quarterly per account. Did I hit it?
Yeah, I think so.
I will second.
Nope. So moved.
So moved.
Thank you.
I will still second.
Beautiful. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you so much, everybody, for coming
Thank you.
tonight. Truly appreciate it.
You should come every time. It's really fun. It's nice to have people here.
Thank you, Blair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Blair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll stay for the warrant or you want to get out of here?
Thank you.
Andrew, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll take our leave.
Potty break.
All right. Yeah.
No, I'll hang in there. We'll keep.
Thank you.
Are you sure?
Yeah, it's-
I can power through this. We can be done with this in 10
It's the
minutes.
over 50 age, I mean, you haven't hit it yet. Yeah, I'm with you. have too.
I don't see 10 minutes.
Thank you. Good night.
Our urges are not.
Thank you so much, Tom. Really appreciate it.
Not the
Have a
same
good night.
as
Thank you.
yours.
You might want to take your break now if you like, because you have a presentation. Master plan.
That's okay.
Cut the
No, keep
warrant.
going. Keep going. Keep going. Let's go. If it becomes urgent, I'll tell you.
Hey, Andrew, can we take 5? We're just going to take a quick 5-minute recess. We'll be right back.
When you get to be over 50, you'll understand.
I feel like I'm accelerating. Of course, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and we are back, and we are on to our next agenda item this evening, which is a vote to execute a lease and PPA agreement with Select Energy. Justin, take it away.
Yes, Mr. Chair. In the board's packet, there's a memo concerning this lease and PPA agreement. If the board remembers, at the board's June 20th meeting, the select board authorized me to enter into a letter of intent agreement with Select Energy in terms of relating to installing and maintaining solar panels for 20 years on the police station roof. And so we have gotten approval from Eversource and DPU on this project. The project has already passed structural engineering, has received approval to construct from Eversource, and has secured the state smart solar incentive. When the board considered this, we were on the threshold of whether it be in Block 7 or Block 8. Unfortunately, we're in Block 8. These things are fast moving. But this project still realizes a significant savings for the town. So over a 20-year period, it's expected that this would save about $244,000 based on this agreement. There is also a corresponding solar canopy project that the MEC board is going to be considering entering as well, and that realizes about $139,000 savings as well for them. So Town council has looked at these agreements that you would authorize me to sign if you decide to go that path are all administered by Power Options, which is a state collective that many municipalities utilize. Select has done over 100-something communities now and done these projects. So the recommendation from our facilities director as well as myself and town council is that you authorize me to execute the lease and PPA agreement. And even though the figure is lower than what we anticipated earlier, but we were conservative, I still think, with that. It's estimated to be between $244,000 to $300,000 of savings over a 20-year period for the town.
It's a win-win.
I will say that I was just at Lincoln Sudbury High School, the regional high school, and they have the solar canopy in the parking lot. I thought it looked great. I thought it looked fantastic. So look forward to that coming to fruition at some point as well. But for this one in particular, I don't have any questions. Anita?
No questions.
No
Thank you for
questions.
doing that.
Beautiful.
In the board's memo, there's two specific motions that we would need to execute. And I just want to highlight that for the board. So for the town solar project that's on the roof, you would execute a power purchase agreement, which is agreement of getting the electricity, as well as a lease agreement for the property that it's installing. And then in terms of the solar canopy project, the MEC Board of Directors would authorize the power purchase agreement, but because it is town property, you still have to authorize me to enter a lease agreement for that project.
Excellent.
Okay.
Should I take it away, or do you got it, Jim?
I move to allow to instruct the town administrator to execute a lease agreement with PPA agreement with Solar Energy on behalf of the Board of Selectmen.
If I can make one adjustment, authorize the town administrator to.
Did I not say that?
No.
What did I say?
No, it's okay.
Well, I will say that. Authorize the town administrator. My
Friendly
apologies.
amendment accepted. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Hearing a second. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And the second motion, please.
I'm a little unclear on what you want for the second motion.
Same thing, just only we're authorizing town administrator to execute the lease for the solar canopy project.
Okay? I move to authorize the town administrator to execute the lease for the solar energy project.
Solar canopy project, yep.
Second.
Hearing a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Justin.
Thank you.
Our next item tonight is to vote to approve the following road events. We have the Hampton Road and Essex Street road closure for a block party on the 21st, and the Norfolk Line Santa Parade on December 3rd. Justin, anything else for us to know?
Quick summary, all our departments have taken a look at this. There are no concerns. No issues.
Okay, I move to
Your
approve.
turn.
Okay, I move to approve the Hampton Road Race and the Santa Parade on December 3rd.
I will second.
Is it a road race?
Well, Hampton Road, Essex Street.
it's a
Block
block
party.
party, yeah.
Block party, sorry.
I was like, that's a short
By the way-
race.
It'll be a
block
road race to
party.
get to the block party.
By the way, to make these easier for you when we do these, we are trying to put them as collective as possible. You can make a motion to say as listed in the agenda.
Okay,
to make them
cool.
easier for you.
So do you hear a second?
Second.
Hearing a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 I have a wonderful block party, and I very much look forward to the Santa Parade. Next item tonight is to vote to approve the use of Town Hill for the following events. We have tree lightings, we have summer concerts.
Holy cow.
They're getting ahead of next year.
My
These are-
lord, how do we have tree lighting and summer concerts in the same agenda?
Well, and
Town Hill's in
tunes
demand.
for tots. Even the
Fireworks reviewing in June, end of summer blast. We're already at the end of summer for 2024, and a cultural event on September 28th of 2024. Wow, we have some departments with foresight in this community. Good for
Yes,
them.
we surely do.
Anything else to add, Justin?
No, I just believe in your agenda background, it is listed as September 28th for the cultural event. So if you take the motion as listed in the agenda, I would just highlight it's actually September 28th for the cultural event.
And I'm going to take a wild shot in the dark and say there's two entries for tree lighting because one's a rain date?
One,
Yeah.
no, my apologies. One is the 2024. I was just going to note that. One is for this year, one is for next year.
Oh.
So that's December 8th, 2024.
Okay, so we have two changes to what's listed in the agenda. We have two tree lightings, one for this year, one for next year. And the cultural event is not the 21st, it's the 28th.
Correct.
I will then accept a motion to approve the uses of Town Hill as listed in the agenda for the meeting.
And amended. I will make such a motion.
So moved. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Hearing a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 May I ask a question?
Sure.
Are we going to limit, or is there a limit on how far in advance you can book a thing? Because at some point, we're going to be, like, December of 2024?
I think we're at the threshold right now.
If you were, there's currently no policy that,
Yeah.
in place to limit how far ahead you can book something, so.
I mean, I think a year in
think
advance
a
is a
year
pretty
is
good
more than
marker,
that.
right?
I agree, and we just crossed that line. December 2024 is more than a year away. It's okay, it's all good.
If somebody
Just
would
say-
like Town Hill on December 8th of 2024, they have exactly 3 months to be able to get their reservation, otherwise it'd be used for the tree lighting.
And the tree lighting is so lovely.
that's
They
good
do
guidance.
such
It's a year is
It is always the
good, yeah.
Sunday after, or the first Sunday in December. It is a set time. I don't think there's ever been a conflict, so I think we're.
Excellent, and I'm all in support of the tree lighting. It just seems we are getting a little carried away with ourselves.
Our next item tonight is to review and execute the warrant for the November 14th, 2023 special town meeting, Justin.
Alrighty, town meeting will soon be upon us, November 14th. So the last time I presented before the board, I had a draft of the warrant, and for the most part, it has not changed. We did make a few adjustments that I do want to highlight. One was the adjustment based on the recommendation from the board to create a debt stabilization fund specifically for Tri-County. So we have a new article based on that, so that's Article 15 now. The other article that's really important to highlight is Article 6. Article 6 was a proposed school committee article that was proposing to fund schematic design, looking for expansion of the Freeman Kennedy School. Ultimately, the school committee took a vote today to withdraw that article and propose a new article. That language is included in this warrant. Essentially, what it does is creating an article to fund for more feasibility study. And expanding on the feasibility study that was approved at the May 2022 annual town meeting. This work would essentially include funding to do a new demographic study, to do enrollment projections, look at potentially modifying current design plans for a school expansion project, along with looking at alternative accommodations. Some of that discussion has been modulars and so forth. So that's what the intent of that article is. There is no funding associated with it just yet, because I think they would have to come up with a cost for that. But that is something that I've spoken with the school superintendent about. I think it might be worthwhile for the board to either attend the advisory meeting where they do discuss this with advisory, so you have some information on that, or have them come before a select board meeting, before town meeting. I defer to you on what you want to do, but I think it's important to be a part of that discussion. The select board should be a part of that discussion.
Is this currently being discussed at the advisory meeting tonight?
It is.
Got it.
But it is just as an informational basis. The school and the school superintendent are not appearing tonight. They're appearing at a later meeting, a future meeting.
Do you happen to know where the advisory meeting is tonight?
Yes, the green room at NCTV.
Across the street. Okay, thank you.
Just a comment, I would like to thank the school committee for taking a step back and revisiting the considerations around this. It's a huge decision. It's a major project if it goes forward, and we need to be sure that we've got everything right. So I want to express my sincere appreciation for the willingness to take a deeper look at this. So I support this change.
And Justin, did you mention if, with the adjustment to the feasibility study, if the intent is to maintain the establishment of a building committee?
Yes, I spoke with Ingrid about that, and I think we're all, her and the school committee, I think we're all aligned that establishing a school building committee, so initial proposal was a Freeman County specific committee. It's an overall building committee that would allow for the school committee and select board to undertake this process collaboratively. You have a committee, appoint some, members within the committee that have experience in relevant fields that we think is suitable, so that we can do this sort of similar to how we did the fire station building committee. So there's, essentially, that committee is going to help steer this feasibility study.
And as part of that article, have we highlighted the number of members, the appointing bodies, all that kind of stuff?
So we actually have specific, and we included this in here, and I will give this to the board as well. I gave this to Ingrid this afternoon because she was interested to know about it. There's specific general bylaw language that we have that indicates how many people get appointed to it. So the school committee would probably have a majority of people because this is a school-specific project, but that the select board would have some appointees as well on that committee.
Sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else in terms of the warrant?
Yes. So one thing that we worked over the weekend on was, for the board's information, as I mentioned earlier, certified free cash was at $2,908,256. So it's a little less than what we had last year, but it is historically better than what the town has had over the past 5 years. But so Todd and I worked on a proposed budget transfer list as well as a capital list. So I just want to highlight it for you. I will, if the board would like to have some of our departments come in to talk about this, more than happy to do that. But I would like to just talk about some of the budget transfers for your information and capital. I'll just run through them, and then we can get into detail at your November 7th meeting. And Amanda's, it's in your packet, but it's also being broadcasted now. So in terms of transfers, we're proposing to transfer $200,000 into the stabilization fund. Last year, we did $150,000. We think it's prudent that we continue to invest in our stabilization fund, particularly with the projects that we're all aware that are coming down the pipeline, and it's important to have our reserves as high as possible to get a favorable bond rating from the rating agencies. Proposing to continue the allocation of $75,000 to our OPEB trust fund, as we have done in the past. There's $20,000 being proposed that we transfer to authorize the select board to determine how to expend $20,000 of the opioid settlement funds that we've had. We are also in the warrant establishing a stabilization fund. I just want to clarify, if we establish a stabilization fund and we put money in there, town meeting will ultimately have to authorize those expenditures. So the reason why we're doing proposing budget transfer is to allow the select board to undertake a process if they so wish now, and give them the flexibility to expend $20,000 of the $40,000 that we've received so far. The remaining $20,000 balance would go to the stabilization fund, and then town meeting, assuming town meeting votes to establish a stabilization fund, would then authorize those expenditures in the future. We have $10,000 for legal fees. We anticipate that it's very likely that the town will have some 40B projects that might, be proposed before the next fiscal year. We didn't have any budget for legal assistance in terms of the 40B, so we're proposing a small amount there to assist us with that if that were to occur. $3,400, and these will sort of be annual expenses. This wasn't included in the annual budget that we just passed. For E-code updates, it's sort of whenever there are any changes to the bylaw, there are E-code updates that we have, and there's a minimal fee associated with that. So we wanted to include that expense there. Rich and Carol, our town clerk, worked on that figure there for us. You'll note the $25,773 going to Norfolk Public Schools. That's associated with the increased state aid that we received based on the budget that was passed by the legislature and signed by the governor. So part of our agreement that we made when the school committee were able to partner with us and reduce their budget was we would give them the difference in state aid there. So we're giving them that full amount there. The fire department PPE replacement, typically the board and the town has seen that in our capital projects, but in theory, that's not really a capital project. That's something that should be part of the annual operating budget because it's annually done. So we're making a budget transfer just to put in that process, and moving forward, we're going to try to put it in our operating budget. And the $35,000 for ambulance billing is essentially paying for ambulance billing services that are accumulated through our billing service provider through the year, and that's transferred from our ambulance receipts. So that's the proposed transfers for this year.
Can I just, it's a procedural question?
Sure.
And probably there's a very logical answer, but you know, do we have to make that double entry of receipt of using, can't we use the reserves to pay the bill?
We are using, so that's a good question. The way it's highlighted is just to show it's from and going to. So it's coming from receipts to pay for.
You've included it in the total, because it's a wash.
Exactly.
It's
a
in
wash.
theory a wash.
It's a wash.
Okay.
Yep.
That will be confusing to some people when it goes up.
So when we did this at Maytown meeting, this is actually one of the things that Jay had nixed. And so insert nix, the town had did a process previously for a long-standing process, and I think upon further review, we wanted to do it this way. This is the correct way to do it. So it is a wash.
Okay.
Yes.
I mean, I knew it was. I was just curious why we were showing it that way.
Yeah. Correct. Article 3 is going associated with capital from borrowing. So these are all water-based projects, and so we're proposing about $3.2 million in proposed projects. It'll be water, the meter replacements, a main replacement on Seekonk, and a main replacement on Village Green and Stanhope. So Todd and Blair, and I would want Blair to come in at a future meeting and talk this through with you if you're interested in it, and I know the board is interested in it. However, just high-level highlight this. Water debt is rolling off, and what we like to try and do is we try to keep things stable. That way, users don't see spikes in their bills or see, artificially lower bill. We like to keep it as stable as possible. So this debt will keep that. This debt aligns with some of the debt that's rolling off. It'll keep bills stable, allows us to do some important capital work that we need to do. Initially, this was going to be an emergency replacement, this main replacement on Seekonk, and initially, when our DPW director saw it, initially it was supposed to be $60,000, and we were proposing using a reserve fund for that. And then when we got into the ground, we realized the damage was much more extensive than that. So it's actually a $900,000 fee. So this aligns with keeping rates stable for us. And I think if you want any more further information, Blair could give you a little bit more there.
I would like to invite him in to talk more about the scope of the projects, if that's all right.
Yep, we'll do.
If you both disagree, then I can be swayed.
I think anytime you're looking at that sum of money, it needs to be discussed.
Borrowing, yeah.
Yep. I agree with the principle, and it's something we've always done, but it should be.
Agreed.
It should be more public.
And so Article 4 is our capital articles for the year. And so we're proposing that we use $1.2 million essentially of certified free cash, which is sort of level to what we did our previous year for some capital projects. So I'll run through them briefly for the board. We're proposing $25,000 for election equipment. This is essentially allow for high scanning equipment that our town clerk has requested. It will make processing times of ballots at elections significantly quicker for those who vote. The following year, we'll probably look at replacing our election equipment as well. We have
sorry.
$115,000 to replace the nitrogen generator. So this is for our irrigation system on Town Hill. We've realized some corrosion and different issues there, so our facilities director proposed this as a priority issue that we should look to replace, that hopefully will save us some money in the future, but we will ultimately have to replace that irrigation system. $100,000 to replace a boiler that is leaking at the moment, and we're concerned that it will fail, so we wanted to plan for this, and this was another priority capital project by our facilities director as well as our library director. A replacement of a car 2 replacement for $36,000. This is a general pool vehicle for admin staff that needs to be replaced as well past its expiration. Instead of getting a new vehicle, the fire chief has found a used vehicle that meets its needs, and it significantly saves us, the town, some money. We're proposing $145,000 for a fire repeater communication system. So this is a public safety system. And also for the board's information, we received a $45,000 earmark in the fiscal year 24 budget to help mitigate this cost. This project is a $190,000 project, but $45,000 of it we are getting assistance for your earmark. Engine 2 replacement is $325,000, and just to remind the board that the board authorized the usage of ARPA funding as well as free cash to help us get a new engine. And so this other $325,000 is being transferred from the ambulance receipts funds as well to assist with that. So we will be in the process of getting a new engine. $44,500 for IT, so replacement of licenses, printers, and desktops.
Is engine 2 one of the pumpers? I think it is.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes. The IT expense is an annual expense that we have. We have $135,000 for Freeman Kenny structural repair at the school. Once again, our facilities director, along with Ingrid, our school superintendent, this was a priority issue in terms of a wall that seems to be separating. Water is flowing in there, and anytime you have water going there, it leads to more damage. So this is a priority issue. $75,000 for technology replacement. Last year we did $100,000, and this would assist them even further. $170,000 for 3 vehicles in the police department. Essentially, it's a cruiser, an admin vehicle, and a detective's vehicle. $183,000 for a wheeled excavator. This is a high priority capital project for DPW, in part because, I know the board has been aware of some of the concern by residents about mowing and different things like that because we've been short-staffed. This wheeled excavator can do essentially 5 things. It has a mower, it has an excavator, it can be used by all departments. It can be used by our highway, transfer station, grounds. So, I think it's a great tool for our DPW department. As well as a vehicle replacement at the transfer station, $100,000 for roadway repairs. Typically, we've been making that allocation. And then some water vehicle replacements, which would be funded via the water enterprise retained earnings. So that's a very quick, high-level rundown of those projects. And, I'm sure the board would like to talk with some of our department heads about some of these projects in a future meeting. So if you want to let me know who you'd like to hear and come from, I'd be more than happy to put this back on the agenda to talk about it in a future meeting. But I gave you the high-level rundown of it.
Thank you, Justin. You had such a good flow, I didn't want to interrupt you, but just going back a couple of slides to quickly talk about the opioid stabilization account. You answered my initial question about us being able to extract funds from the stabilization once established, needing to be done via town meeting. So,
yes.
But you addressed my concern with that by moving $20,000 into what seemed to be a discretionary kind of select board oversight account.
Yes.
Have we received any interest from entities or organizations that are looking for those funds?
Yes, we've received several emails. We received emails from people who have established sort of Rentham established an opioid relief fund, essentially. So partners that assisted with them establish that reached out to us, say, hey, are you interested in collaborating with us, maybe doing that? The SAFE Coalition, we've had one of our nurses that serves the town reach out to us. So there has been interest there.
Gilly House, I think.
I think there's interest in these funds, and the reason why, I think I've spoken with all the board, there was a directive to not kick this down the can any further. And it wasn't the board's decision. Initially, the state had indicated that they were going to create a new finance law that would allow us to put in a special account. So we held off, assuming that would be the case. They didn't end up doing that. So now the board has said, we want to move forward with this. So that's why the transfer in advance, so we don't wait for Maytown meeting to get authorization. We can do some work in the meantime and then have another proposal at Maytown meeting.
Fantastic, thank you.
You're welcome.
When we do have Blair in to speak about the borrowing water-oriented projects, I would like to also hear from him. We used to have a fantastic shared GIS overlay that highlighted the priority areas they were targeting in terms of road repair.
Yep.
So it could highlight to the community not only the grade that they had been assessing for some of the roads out there, but also kind of what was next on the list based on priority. And it was a great alignment tool for the community to understand, where money's being allocated, what's coming up next, where your road stands on that list. I don't know if it's been maintained since that, though, so I'd like to hear more about if that was something that just fell to the wayside, or if it still exists, and we should be pointing people there when they have questions.
We can have Blair speak to it. I know generally, I think we've started to see even more municipalities move slightly away from it. There are GIS systems in place, and they rank the priorities. I think one bit of trepidation is when people see a list and say, all right, these are the priorities, they assume that this is going to go next, right? And there's a certain allocated portion of funds that go to these things. Sometimes you have emergencies, so sometimes you might skip over that one that was listed as a priority, and then sometimes our DPW director gets some calls from those people on that road and say,
No, I think people should understand that there is always going to be a situation, but generally
but
speaking.
Blair has it, and we can share that, obviously.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yes. Anything else?
Is there anyone else?
Yeah.
That you would, any other groups? I know Blair.
I think I'll let the board speak. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, having Aaron come in to talk about the engine, I think would be good. I know he has before, but just to kind of recap as we head into this meeting, I think would be helpful. Blair, as we said before, I kind of want to hear about the Freeman Kennedy structural issues.
Yes.
So if we could have our facilities director come in, that'd be great. But I'll also open it up to the board for anybody that I didn't mention.
It's a random question, but you said nitrogen generator, and then you'd eventually have to replace the whole system. But I'm assuming if we replace the generator and you replace the system, that won't have to be a redundant purchase.
Correct. This is preempting that. It'll work with the new system. Yes. But those were the people that I thought the board would want to hear from as well. Facilities director, DPW director, and our fire chief.
Sounds good. Yep.
Thank you for the rundown.
You're welcome. Thank you. So if that is all said in terms of those questions, the board can execute the warrant for the town meeting.
Sounds like a plan.
Procedurally, though.
Yeah.
I move that the board execute the warrant for this town special, no?
It's okay, go ahead.
No?
No, we didn't know if we were
I thought
going
Kevin
to say
wanted to
something.
say something.
I'll open it up during the further comments. Go ahead.
I can wait.
Okay, now that we've waited. If the school committee does come back with a major adjustment to the feasibility study article, which you don't believe is going to happen,
You never know, but it changes today. Procedurally, if it's within the scope of the article, they can make that change and it can be done at town meeting. The reason why it needed to be done tonight in terms of the original article, the original scope of the article was for schematic design. So on town meeting, and I spoke with Jay about this, that turning it back to feasibility was outside the scope and it wouldn't be allowed. But in terms of staying within the scope of it, they could change the language on town meeting. So,
got it. Okay,
yes.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry, Anita.
No, that's all right. I was trying to be efficient. I move that the board execute the warrant for the special town meeting to be held on November 14th, 2023, subject to the final review by town council.
Second?
Second.
Hearing a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, on to our discussion items.
So the next agenda item is a discussion of a master plan tour, and Ms. Harris Long from MAPC is really just to discuss that and the process they're going to do regarding that.
Good evening, Andrea. Thank you for joining us and hanging in here this long.
Happy to. It's been a busy night for you all, so I'll try to keep it quick. Thanks for having me.
Go right ahead.
We wanted to kind of share an update on the master planning process. I'm Andrea Harris-Long. For those of you who I haven't seen in a while, I'm the manager of housing and neighborhood development at MAPC and co-leading this project with Josh Fiala and Gloria from our project team. And we've been busy working with your chairman and a lot of other folks at the town on the master plan. And we have sort of wrapped up phase 1 and are shifting to phase 2 and thought that it would be a good time for us to do what we're calling kind of a virtual roadshow and join you all this evening and some other boards and committees to just give everyone an update on what's been going on with the master plan, and then also share kind of some opportunities for feedback that we want to hear from you all. So I'll kind of go quickly over the process because I'm sure you all have been following along, and then really get to the meat of the presentation, which is the draft goals that the master plan steering committee have been working on. So, the Master Plan Steering Committee, including Chair Colcutt, has been working really hard with us since December on the master plan. You can see here it's a good representation of all of your planning board, some residents, and we have some ambassadors. So it's been a really good group of folks to work with and help shape the plan through this process. We also have a pretty big MAPC team working on the plan. So I mentioned that Josh, Gloria, and I have kind of been the leadership team, but we have a lot of subject matter experts that have been working behind the scenes on all of the different policy topic areas. And then you all know that the master plan, it's an expansive kind of visionary document that looks forward over the next 10 years into all of these different planning topic areas to help guide your work over the next 10 years. And we've been doing a lot of research and community engagement, and now we're starting to work our way down this chart and talk about goals and think about strategies. And we've been continuing to operate under this framework where phase 1 was really talking to people, talking to town staff and the boards and committees and residents to understand what issues are facing Norfolk now and into the future. And then this fall and into the winter, we'll be focusing on, what are those issues? We've distilled them down. How can we think about solutions to those challenges and issues that folks have shared? And then we'll culminate in the spring with hopefully a really solid roadmap to help you all continue to guide the work that you're doing. So I know some of you have been participating in the engagement that we've been doing, but we have really spent spring and summer trying to get out into the community in a lot of different ways. We had a kickoff visioning forum back in April and had really great attendance. You can see here. We had a lot of small group discussions and did a few different exercises to think about, what challenges are facing Norfolk, what opportunities exist, and then start to think about kind of what's your vision for Norfolk and how can that carry through the entire master plan. We also did some more kind of innovative ways to get in touch with folks and hear different perspectives. We met with the Norfolk Small Business Association, and that was a really good conversation to really hone in on what the business community in Norfolk needs. We had a townwide survey that was up for a few months, and we had 1,000 people actually take the survey, and that provided a lot of really thoughtful feedback. And then we've been getting into the community. So we attended the Norfolk Community Day in June. We went to baseball opening day and kind of handed out business cards to promote the planning process. So we've been trying to reach people where they are and a lot of different types of people so that we're getting a good representation of perspectives through this process. Wanted to give you kind of a snapshot of what we're hearing. So probably this isn't surprising to you since this is what you live and breathe every day, but a lot of folks are really concerned about managing growth and change. I think this is especially pertinent since you earlier tonight were talking about sewer and, infrastructure needs as you are growing and changing. And so that's something that's top of mind as we've been talking to people. We also have been hearing that, there's a tax burden that folks feel and they want to see new investment and development that can help, kind of have a different tax base for Norfolk so that the residents aren't paying as much in their taxes. That's come up in a lot of our feedback that we've heard from folks. And then also, making sure that town amenities are meeting their needs. We also have been trying to ask, what is Norfolk doing really well that you can leverage and really make better use of in this master plan and thinking about your future strategies. And folks, see an opportunity for more commercial investment, especially in town center, in 115 1A area, folks really enjoy those community events like you approved earlier tonight that people are really planning in advance for. So, Norfolk wants, residents really want to see these continue into the future. That's something that I think really brings the community together. And then continuing to provide really high quality parks and open spaces and sidewalks. So those are just some of the snapshots from the community survey. We do have more information on the project webpage if you haven't had a chance to dig into the results of that yet. So that was kind of a recap quickly of kind of where we've been, how we've been trying to just get a sense for what Norfolk residents want to see over the next 10 years. We have also been doing a lot of research, the team and the different subject matter experts, to look at a lot of existing data and also considering different best practices. And we put together this existing conditions brief that's available on the project webpage. I'd encourage you to go take a look at it. It has a lot of existing conditions data that really rounds out the public feedback that we've been hearing. And then what I really wanted to focus on tonight, because we're at this point in the process, is now that we have, heard a lot of the community feedback, we've done a lot of research, we've, looked at what other communities are doing that are facing similar challenges. We have worked with the steering committee, and at our September steering committee meeting, we talked about draft goals. And so we're at the point in the process where we have our existing conditions brief, and we have some draft goals that we're trying to now share with you all and members of the public who've been engaged in the process to see if we're still continuing on the right track. So tonight, I wanted to highlight that those draft goals are available. I'm happy to, go into them tonight with you all, but I also recognize that you've had a long meeting and you may want to just dive into them on your own. So you can view all of those draft goals on the project webpage. And then we really tried to recognize that people may want to provide feedback in a few different ways. And so I'm going to walk through kind of the different ways that both you and then the constituents that you serve can actually go and review all of this material and continue to give us feedback to help us refine the master plan through this process. So when you go to the project webpage, there is just a simple PDF that lists all of the draft goals, so you can read them all in one place. And then if you have just ideas that you want to just put into a comment form and send us, then you can do it that way. It's a very simple comment form. We also have what we're calling an interactive online open house. So it's kind of like a message board of sorts where we've taken all of the draft goals and put them into this website that's called Social Pinpoint, and it allows people who really want to get into the weeds and really want to provide detailed feedback. You can go to this website through the project webpage and hit like or dislike to show that you support or maybe don't support a goal. And then you can also add comments. So it's a really cool way to kind of interact with the goals if you're a resident that really does want to participate to that level. We know that not everyone maybe has the time or interest to do that, but we wanted to continue to have this robust way of, letting people interact if they feel inclined. We also will be having paper copies available. We'll be working with Rich to have the goals printed at Town Hall for those who may not, feel as comfortable using the internet or the computer, and we'll have paper forms that can be returned to Town Hall. And then we're also doing, as I mentioned, this kind of virtual roadshow where we're coming to you all tonight, and then we'll be going to the Conservation Commission, the Council on Aging out at the River's Edge Senior Center, the Advisory Committee, and then we'll meet again with the Small Business Association to kind of circle back and say, how did we take your feedback and draft goals that your business needs. And then lastly, you can always do kind of the tried and true method of just writing your comments and either submitting them, in a letter form or handwritten to Town Hall at Rich, or you can email them to the MAPC team at Josh's email. And all of this information is on the project webpage. So we've been keeping this up to date, and hopefully this has been a resource for you all and town employees and residents to continue to stay up to date with the master planning process as we've been going through the various stages. And then this just kind of gives you a high level overview of where we are. You can see that we're wrapping up on phase 1, and now we're shifting to what I think is the funnest part of thinking about goals and then the strategies and actions of, how can you start to do the work to implement some of these big ideas that have come out of the process. So that was a very quick overview, but we just wanted to use this time to kind of give you an update and see if you have any questions. I'm happy to run through some of the draft goals if you'd like, or just answer general, questions about the process and where we've been so far.
I'll just add to what Andrea had outlined is that one of the most amazing things that I saw as part of this process and being part of the steering committee was the level of granularity and detail they went into in collecting some of this feedback from the community. If you were to look at any of the 9 topics that they went through, you could dive into each of those topics and highlight where people fell in terms of priority on an individual item that could be contained into that topic, and then identify, well, taking it a step further than that, is this something you want to see here? Is this something you want to see? It was so directional. It was a little cumbersome to go through it all. I think it took 3 meetings to get through all that data to begin. But it was just, it really outlined the direction and the feeling of the community as a whole better than I've ever seen it lined up. I mean, we talk to the community on a daily basis and get this kind of feedback, but to see it mapped out in that manner, it just made it very clear as to where priorities lie in terms of this plan. So I want to give kudos to the MAPC team on the way that they collected that, presented that, and have been managing the whole process from start to front. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions from the rest of the board?
No, it looks really exciting, and I hope the community is accessing the website so they see the work that you're doing and still take those opportunities to have their voice be heard.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you for all you're doing. No questions.
Great. Well, thank you all for
Thanks
having
for
us
hanging in there.
this evening. Yeah, thank you. We did send out an email today. I think it went out like at 4:00 today to the project list. We have a lot of folks who signed up, so you may have received that, but please, help us spread the word because we do really want a lot of engagement through the website and different ways. So really appreciate you taking the time this evening to hear from us.
Thank you so much, Andrea.
Excited to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our next item tonight is to discuss the upcoming select board meeting calendar. Justin.
Just real briefly, it's crazy that we're going to be entering holiday period soon, but just want to highlight a couple of dates for the board. I know we initially talked about November 7th being Election Day and potentially not meeting, but there's nothing local sort of focus, so the board in the past has met during that period. So I just want to highlight in November you'll have 3 meetings. You have November 7th, November 14th, which is the pre-town meeting, and then November 21st. December is one that you might want to consider. December, we're scheduled to meet December 5th and 19th. The 19th is the week before Christmas. Last year, we moved meetings back to back. We did like the first week and the second week. So that's something for the board to consider. And then in January, we will resume January 2nd and 16th. The 2nd is obviously the day after New Year's. So I wanted to put that on your radar. I know typically the board likes to take votes in terms of changing dates. So we could put something on the November 7th meeting, or you could act now. You don't have to, but it's really determined of the board. But want to at least highlight the December meetings for you because we did change that last year, and it is a week before Christmas.
I would be inclined to move the December meeting to the 12th with an asterisk for if necessary, if after the 5th we determine that there's enough content for us to warrant another meeting the following week. But I don't think that the 19th would be a prudent date from a scheduling perspective, at least on my end.
I think that sounds great. My only question out there is we have a night like tonight where you have 17 things going on at the same night. So I'd hate to have us be missing, like the school's going to advisory or something like that because we've rescheduled our meeting. But
Well, luckily, after fall town meeting is done,
there's
most everybody is pretty much done
already-
except for us.
Except for us. We're the Energizer bunnies.
I don't know if there would be necessarily too much overlap.
Of
The only thing I
conflict.
can think of is the planning board.
Yeah, I'm happy to move it up. I think it's great. The 19th is going to be hard to pay attention.
I'm fine with that. Yeah. So we've got the 7th, 14th, 21st, 5th, and 12th if needed. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes, a nice summary.
And January 2nd and 16th.
And then you've got the 2nd and the 16th. Is that the plan? Or the 9th and the 23rd?
Or should we move the 2nd?
That's what we're talking with the board with. What do you prefer?
I'd prefer to move the 2nd.
There are 5 Tuesdays in January this year.
There are.
So I would be open to moving the meetings to the 9th and the 23rd, so long as that does not cause ultimate chaos with the rest of the scheduling.
Pandemonium.
I think one of the things that you'll know is, obviously, if you adopt this calendar and say as an if necessary on the 12th, let's say in theory if there isn't anything for the 12th and you might have something substantive, then maybe you want to consider it earlier. But if you have the 12th, I think you have more than enough time.
I mean, very little happens the week of the 25th.
Exactly.
I mean, that,
Right.
most people are away, it's Christmas week, then that goes right through the, New Year's Day. I would favor the 9th and the 23rd, and if there's a reason that we need to get together, the chair can always call it.
I like it.
I like it too.
The 16th is also the day after Martin Luther King Day, too. So if you were,
So by going the 9th and the 23rd, we avoid that.
Yeah.
I love it.
I'll just check with the planning board.
Thank you.
Move them if needed.
Give us all a chance to recover from New Year's Eve.
So we'll put this on the board's agenda for the 7th, and we can officially take the vote on that.
Thank you.
Deal.
Our next item tonight is to discuss the Select Board Goal-Setting Workshop. Do you have anything you want to set us up with, Justin?
I just want to highlight that the board, well, I'll let the board speak to it, but I did highlight that I felt like we had a very productive goal-setting workshop. We're going to send it electronically to the board, and I think you have in your packet sort of just bullet points of things that were discussed. We're going to work collaboratively. Jeff came in with a man, and they are working hand in hand together with us. I think we can flesh it out. We just wanted to have bullet points as reminders of what we discussed, based on our conversations with you all and where this discussion goes, and as well as reaching out to us. We're going to work together to put the goals that the board wants to do in a draft form for a following meeting, and then we can go from there. But I think the chair wanted to put this on the agenda to highlight that you had a goal-setting workshop and discuss what you discussed, and it was productive and so forth. So.
Yeah, I mean, mainly we just wanted to highlight to the community that we did have the opportunity to get together over at the library with Jeff, who was a fantastic resource, as a wealth of experience in this arena. He helped us to kind of hone in on some of the aligned goals that we were looking at moving forward, some of the priorities in terms of what we were looking to achieve this coming year, and even some of the things that I think that we didn't know that we were looking to do. He helped us to highlight. There are a couple of high-level items and takeaways that we had that we wanted to get working on in the short term. I think some of those included coming up with some fiscal guidelines for the path ahead, so that, in the very unlikely event that one of us ever does leave this board, that other boards do have some general guidance as to what the long-term fiscal strategy should be, at least what we deemed as responsible in today's current operating world. We also talked about ways that the Select Board could get out in front in some of the messaging and communications on some of the initiatives that are out there in the community today. We definitely want to take a more active role at town meeting in some of the article presentations and background presentations there. And I think that we highlighted a couple of communication initiatives. I know that we've already talked about things that we were doing from a newsletter standpoint, from a cable show standpoint, but looking past that, leveraging our public relations partner a little bit more, holding more feedback sessions, office hours, things of that nature. So we really do look forward to mapping out how we bring those out and bring them to fruition. And, I think the greatest thing that came out of this meeting is that we had this general alignment between all three of us that this was a fantastic path forward in terms of what we look to accomplish over the next year. But I will open it up to the other members for their perspective.
I would say we did some homework in advance about what we saw as strengths and weaknesses for the board and for the town, and it was really interesting to see how aligned we were, three of us individually doing that work and then seeing it all out there, that we were pretty lined up in terms of what our thinking was. It was exciting to have the opportunity to, not that we don't do work at the meetings, because obviously we work at these meetings, but to really do some of that vision work that like we had from that beautiful presentation about the master plan, but to really talk together as the three of us, what is the vision that's informing our decisions day to day. And so I found it to be very, very valuable. And lunch was excellent. Thank you, Amanda. But we We spent a long time together. That's why I mentioned that. We spent a long time together, and I think all of us left there thinking we could have spent even longer. Like, we needed even more time to spend together. So it was exciting to set goals together, and we renewed a commitment to do the work every year to keep it going.
And that's why, another reason why it was good to have Jeff there. I think Jeff did a good job of kind of reining us back in
Yes.
and get us back on
He was an
topic
excellent
when we started going
facilitator.
down rabbit holes. Jim?
Excellent.
Two things that I would point out about the meeting that I really enjoyed, and I've been through a lot of these. One, the goals that we set were implementable. They were, all too often, these goals get too flowery, too deep, and they focus on things that really aren't within our ability to manage, and really no sense in monitoring or taking a look at. And I think what was good about this process was that this wasn't all words. They were small, actionable steps that we can actually work on. And that's unusual when you get into these goal-setting things. They usually get too complicated and really beyond the scope of what we're there for. The other thing I really always enjoy about these sessions, and it went especially well, I think, with the three of us, is they are truly brainstorming straw man opportunities. And Jeff has a knack of forcing you to step outside your comfort zone and getting you to think. We're all victims of our experience and our time and our knowledge, and sometimes we get stuck in that rut. And I think Jeff has always, I've worked with him before, he's always had that skill to pull you out of that rut and get you to look at it in a different way. And I thought he did that very well, and I found that very useful in the tool. So I thought it was a great meeting.
Agreed.
One of the better ones I've attended in a long time.
Absolutely. So, as Justin had outlined, next steps, we're going to map this out in a more outlined format that's going to highlight some of the deliverable dates and timelines and things of that nature. And I think that we'll be sharing that during one of the upcoming meeting agendas, correct?
Yes, sir.
Fantastic. Thank you, sir. Our next item tonight is our general updates. Justin, take us away.
Tonight I don't have anything.
Good man, good man.
The only update that I have is this Saturday is the No One Walks Alone fundraising event to benefit Norfolk resident who was battling breast cancer, and also all those who are currently fighting the fight. That is going to be hosted by the Norfolk Lions, and I believe that is at 9 a.m. on Saturday.
9 a.m., yes.
That is all I had, though.
I just wanted to remind the community there is an election on October 24th. It has an unusual timeline. Usually our election is open from 7 to 8 or 7 to 7, but this one opens at noon to 8 o'clock at night. Is that correct?
That
So
is
it goes from
100%
noon
correct.
to 8 o'clock, which is different. If that's not working for your calendar, we need to talk about absentee voting. And we'll be voting on the Tri-County project, which is summarized in our minutes very nicely. So if you'd like some information about that, it's very nicely summarized on the website.
I apologize. That's a great reminder. I'd sent something to the board earlier today regarding that. But one thing to add to that, just for the board's information, we've put an alert on the town website and regarding that, and we will put it on our social media as well as work with Guilfoyle to get the promotion of that, because it is an unusual time for it, the date as well as the time period, as Anita mentioned. So
And
thank
it's
you
an
for that.
out-of-sight, out-of-mind project,
Correct.
and it's a very important project, so we need
Yes.
people to get out.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have two updates. The Norfolk Police were involved in a program recently, actually just a couple of days ago, regarding suicide prevention. It was a pretty good turnout. It was very informative, and I want to thank our police for all the work that they do in that area. It's one of their focuses in trying to deal not only with the opioid crisis, but also with suicide prevention, especially around veterans. And they did a really good job. There were a number of different organizations participated, but it was, I don't want to say it was a fun evening because it was an alarming evening to get the data, but it was well done and very informative. And I think there'll be more material coming out on that. So I thank them for that. That's it. Oh, I did have, no, I think that's it. That's it. I think we've all had, it's been an interesting and fruitful evening.
All right. If that does it for our updates, I will move on to the report of the warrants. Do I have a motion to approve the warrants?
Do you want me to read them one by one, or will you take a motion as presented on the agenda?
I love it.
I will move to approve the warrants as presented on the agenda.
Second.
Hearing a second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And it looks like we do have a set of minutes to approve.
I move to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
Hearing a second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening, everybody.
Thank you.